Hello, fellow psychonauts, Salvia enthusiasts, mind expansionists, coming to you live here on a Thursday night from Rainland, Ireland. And I just wanted to cover off a couple, just principal things about Salvia, because it's unlike really any other substance. There's lots of lectures and stuff you can find out on YouTube, I'm going to post some links on some of these to different videos on some of probably on this video actually, of just some kind of other YouTubers who've influenced the way I would treat this substance. This is not like a recreational substance like weed or LSD or mushrooms. Your environment is very important. You should be in a controlled environment with possibly one other person maybe, but definitely not in a big room full of people with TVs and phones and everything going on, unless you want to have a jarring, unpleasant experience. And that kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk about today. A lot of my Salvia experience too, there was an initial, curiosity. It's not something that you do every day, So these trip reports were recorded at the time that I used, that I had a certain experience or used Salvia. I encourage people to write down, quickly after this, as quickly as possible, because you're not really centered enough to write down and take notes all the time right away, but just kind of, try to force yourself to at least write some little synopses, kind of like recording dreams, if you can do that without waking up fully. It takes some skill, but you can do it, So what I like to break my Salvia experience into kind of 3 stages, and I think I've identified some things just through small dosage experiments and that sort of thing. So stage 1 is usually experienced at like 5x or 10x. That level of strength. What I'll say about this stage is that Salvia is actually fairly enjoyable. It can be actually really hilarious. If you're just smoking a little bit, like 5x, or even just a little bit of 10x, maybe like one hit, but not such a massive amount. You kind of have to learn how to regulate it. I've done it just experiments myself where I've just burned a little bit in a bong, pulled a little smoke into the chamber, and just wisped a little down, just very small little hits, just to see where the threshold is. One of my other videos called Identifying the Salvia Threshold, and I was very excited when I discovered this, this low dosage kind of identifying the period, the point where you leave kind of this reality. But at small dosages, I'm talking, one hit maybe over a little period, maybe another one if you want to go kind of back in there. In this stage, this reality remains really intact in a sense. There's a certain sense of elongating that I've experienced where the room will become, quite huge. Your kind of sense of space and where you sit in the universe in this reality is disturbed, but it's not altered in the sense that you experience the wheel or some of these archetypes or themes that Interbeing Art, for example, is another channel who explores these themes. a lot, and it's really pretty astounding that people can have similar experiences on this substance with no relation to each other or correspondence or anything like that, in completely different environments. But at this stage, what I found is like furniture, surfaces, chairs and couches and things in your environment become kind of like clay, like they start to look like clay or Play-Doh or something. And it's really funny. You can just laugh. I've seen trip reports, and on myself, I've just found things completely hilarious at this stage, to the point where I couldn't stop laughing and giggling about how rubbery this chair was or something. And you still have this sense of being pulled, this weight, which once you take a hit of salvia, you feel an immediate kind of like this pulling or this weight on you, on your legs. Things kind of you become almost like numb. A lot of times you'll just sit there, like just in like frozen kind of animation, just like, oh wow, everything's just shifted, and it's such a quick thing that happens. So that's the first stage, kind of. You don't really leave this present reality. Salvia Divinorum merely alters it or skews the perspective of it. And for some reason, and I've heard this a lot from other people too at low dosages, about this sense of everything resembling like clay or becoming pliable and malleable. I think it represents what it's trying to show us is the stages on your way from this reality, what we consider this reality, into what's beyond that, because there seems to be something beyond that. You would find no other substance on the planet where people have had almost the same kind of like themes and reoccurring things. There's only a few psychedelics that would, I think, bring that about. Certainly no one who's taken LSD or psilocybin and meets someone in a completely different place in the world. Oh yeah, you've taken psilocybin. Did you see the blue dog? And that person, oh yeah, I saw the blue dog. There isn't like a ongoing, there's no omnipresent theme there that's gonna be similar from one person to the next. I mean, you might have something, I saw trails, or music and sound became color. Those are common things. But the sense of actually seeing an object or something like that, that's not typically like exactly the same experience from John over here in Brazil to Peter over here in the United States. They're not going to have the same experience. It's ridiculous. So this question then comes up too, like, is this real, what we're seeing? But yeah, stage one, I would say at, like a 5x or 10x and 10x and maybe small amounts. Because I went all the way in on 10x, like my first experience, but I did take 2 or 3 pretty good size hits and held it in for as long as I could, 20 seconds or so. So that's stage one, and I'm just referring to my notes here because it helps me, like I say, I encourage other people to do that too, is write down your stuff, at least if that's the way you remember. Other people, maybe you make like a little audio file or something, you can describe it that way. That doesn't take as much effort sometimes for some people if you're more verbal. For me, writing things down just kind of auto-inscribes it for some reason into my kind of consciousness, and I can remember it easier. So let me move on to stage two. What I consider stage two would be maybe like a 10x at least that strength, maybe several hits of that. What I think stage 2 can be the most uncomfortable and jarring kind of stage, I think. Because you're kind of you're experiencing the breaking up of this reality and moving into this other thing, this other plane of existence. So yeah, it can be very jarring and unpleasant. This is kind of when, in my view, the wheel emerges. And what I've seen personally is, you know, like this giant wheel that's rotating, and it has a pattern on it. For me, I always saw like a purplish kind of pattern repeated over the width of this, and it's a three-dimensional kind of object, and there's no stopping it. It's basically representing the shredding up of this reality, and it is extremely frightening sometimes, and just alarming, and it's real. It's like it is, and that's when people tend to thrash around a lot, because this wheel tends to roll over you. It's coming, and there's no denying it. It's bigger than anything. It takes up your entire vision. That's another thing that's altered too, is with Salvia, is just your sense of who you are in this time and space. You know, like I'm sitting in this apartment. This is my reality looking forward. I don't know what this reality is in back of me. Well, I do, because I'm making a video. But in a normal circumstance, you know, your vision, your time and space that you're sitting in is easily identified by your visual realization and perception of what's going on in front of you. But Salvia can kind of turn this on its head completely. And sometimes at the stage 2, what I like to call stage 2, you don't really experience this full breakthrough, but you do experience the breaking apart of kind of this reality where you didn't maybe in stage 1. And that's what I think causes a lot of just uncomfortable, jarring events that can happen, where, for example, just stuff becoming immaterial, almost like a wall, and then there's this big thing coming out, and you see people, like, you actually feel like you're inside maybe an inner tube, and rolling down a hill. That's how you feel, except it never really flattens you, but you think it's going to kill you. You think that's going to be it when this thing comes up and rolls over you. And if you do break through in this stage in kind of a lower dosage, it might be kind of like interrupted, in my view, by this reality kind of pushing its way back in. And it's your ego and your superego, and fighting back and forth too. It's important to try to let go, and it's difficult to really do that on Salvia. That's the unfortunate thing about this substance. Stage 3, I would describe this as, a couple big hits of 10x, maybe 3, or some 20x, and that's as far as I've gone, honestly, guys, because I'm not a big proponent of sparking up some 80x right off the bat, or something just incredibly. That means that it's 80 times more powerful than the leaf plant that the tribe would say is the only way to do it, which is very gradual and much different than the way us Westerners have kind of been introduced to this substance, smoking extract, which is, you know, much stronger. 5x is 5 times stronger, and so on. That's pretty heavy. Like if you were to put that on a scale with like some weed or something like that, like you'd be talking about incredible strengths. Stage 3, though, when you do smoke 20x, you can kind of avoid, it's like you can avoid the breaking through and the appearance of the wheel and the shifting of this reality. I think that another thing that people talk about is really kind of funny, unless it actually happens to you, which it has happened to me, is becoming an inanimate object. And it's not really, what I discovered is the thing you have to remember, which makes you not be afraid of it as much, as you're not actually becoming the inanimate object. You're not a person anymore at stage 3. You're completely out of this reality here, this room, wherever you are, that's gone. You're not really you any longer. You're like a point of reference, almost like a molecule or something. You know, and you can float around. You don't know really how to maneuver in that state. Because you've completely forgotten by this sense, by this point, who you are and your position in time and space, and now who you are and your position in time and space in the universe is completely fluid. So what happens, in my view, is when you've gone into this other existence, this other reality, for me, and if you watch my first video, it was about going into this Sesame Street sort of duckland kind of place. That seems to be where I've been, you know, most of the time, is in this kind of cartoon landscape, which is a lot of stuff, I think, from my childhood seems to come back, just because it's Sesame Street. Some people experience more Arthur-esque visuals and stuff like that. It depends like what cartoons you watched when you were a kid, you know, in some sense. Probably because we're the most innocent at that stage, and we don't have preconceptions and, you know, biases and as much and that sort of thing. But there's no recollection in stage 3 of this being immersed this much. There's no recollection of having smoked salvia. The fact that you forget about having consumed the substance altogether is what makes it stressful for a lot of people, in my view. But yeah, this is the stage where I think it can happen that you merge with an inanimate object. Like I merged with an inanimate object in this same kind of cartoon. It was like the first trip. I'm going to get into that trip later, because that was the first experience where it was like a moment where I was pretty certain that I had become a milk jug, like those containers of milk that you had with the 4 milks in them and the little steel thing that you pick up to carry them. I had become like a carton of milk, a little plastic bottle of milk, but that bottle of milk was in this other place. It wasn't in this reality. So it wasn't anything that I could see in my present, what we call reality. It wasn't a coffee cup that's actually sitting there, or this pint glass of beer. It was something that I saw on a stoop in Salvia land or cartoon land or wherever I had gone to. But yeah, so that's kind of the 3 stages that I've come up with, and this video has gotten a lot longer than I thought it would. So I'm going to wrap it up tonight, but I just wanted to get that out there, and also, you know, if you guys, if there's some people out in here who are watching this that have had similar experiences, you know, I'd love to hear your comments and feedback. And thanks everybody for watching, and have a good evening.